This video is going to be all about running tests in parallel. Let's have a look at what parallel testing is. So in other words, WebdriverIO is going to make sure that up to 10 tests are running at any given time. It says that WebdriverIO already tests each spec file or feature file in 𝐶ucumber in parallel within a single session. And what this means is that by default, all of your spec files running parallel in WebdriverIO. Now we've set that to 2. I'm going to scroll up here just to show you guys. And the way this is set up is that it goes to tests, parallel folder, and then all of the files inside of there. So both of these spec files will get picked up. Welcome to this video series where we explore the world of WebdriverIO to help you succeed in your test automation career. Hello, my name is 𝐻𝐿, and I'm the founder of AutomateNow. And I'm excited to team up with Lambda Test to bring you these awesome videos. My background is in computer engineering and I have over a decade in software testing experience. You can learn more about my company by heading over to AutomateNow.io, and you can also find us on YouTube by searching AutomateNow. This video is going to be all about running tests in parallel. Let's have a look at what parallel testing is. Running tests sequentially, one after another, it's slow. It is better to run your tests in parallel. That means running multiple tests at the same time. That's what parallel testing means. Let's just say that you have 10 tests that you need to run. And each one of these tests takes about 6 seconds to run. If you were to run all these tests sequentially, it would take approximately 60 seconds to run all of them. Now, what if you could run all of the tests at once? That means that it would only take about 6 seconds for all of the tests to execute, which means that you're saving about 90% in execution time. Isn't that amazing? And here I have a graphical representation that compares parallel testing to sequential testing. So in sequential testing, we have only one test being executed at a time. Okay, so you click run and you're going to have one test come up and start running. When that test is done executing, another test is going to kick on, and so on until all your tests in your test file or your test suite are finished. Now, when it comes to parallel testing, there is really no limit on how many tests can run concurrently or at the same time. The only limitation is by your resources. In other words, how many CPUs or how many resources you have available to handle the amount of tests that you want to run simultaneously. Now, in this scenario, we have up to 10 tests running at the same time. Okay, so these tests are running in parallel. And at any given time, you can have up to 10 tests running. Now, as soon as any one of these tests is done executing, another one is going to take its place. So in other words, WebdriverIO is going to make sure that up to 10 tests are running at any given time. Of course, this is just a hypothetical scenario. Like I said before, you can have any number of tests depending on your resources that you have available. Now, let's see what WebdriverIO documentation has to say about running tests in parallel. It says that WebdriverIO already tests each spec file or feature file in 𝐶ucumber in parallel within a single session. And what this means is that by default, all of your spec files running parallel in WebdriverIO. So if you have multiple spec files, those spec files will run in parallel. It also says here that in general, you should try to test only a single feature per spec file. Try not to have too many or too few tests in one file. The max instances is what controls the number of spec files that will run in parallel. And I have a word of caution here because this can be a bit confusing, and it is that by default, WebdriverIO runs your tests within a single spec file sequentially. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you set this max instances to a number greater than 1. If you only have one spec file, that means that those tests inside of that spec file will run sequentially, one after the other. It is only when you have multiple spec files that your tests begin to run in parallel. Now let's have a look at some examples in code. And to begin, I'm going to show you guys this spec file that I have here. Actually, I have a couple of them here. So the first one is called parallel1.spec.js. Let me open this file here. And as you can see, we're navigating to the Lambda test Selenium playground, and then we're making a bunch of assertions here. There's about 6 tests that happen in this spec file. I'm going to open up this other file over here, parallel2.spec.js. And in this file here, we have also a number of tests that are also navigating to the Selenium playground, and they're doing various validations on that website. Now, what I want to do is to run the tests in parallel. So essentially, I'm going to be running both of these spec files simultaneously. All right, so the way we do this is we're going to go to this WebdriverIO config file. Let's open that up, and we're going to look for max instances. And this is where we're going to set how many spec files do we want to run at the same time. Right now it's set to 1, which means only one spec file will run. And all the tests inside of that file will run sequentially, not in parallel. But we want them to run in parallel. We want both of these files to run in parallel. So here I'm going to set this number to 2. Okay, so that's going to allow me to run 2 spec files at once. Now we've set that to 2. I'm going to scroll up here just to show you guys. And the way this is set up is that it goes to tests, parallel folder, and then all of the files inside of there. So both of these spec files will get picked up. Okay, so we have that set up right there. Now all I'm going to do is to save my work here, and then I'm going to run my tests. So here I'm just going to type npm run wdio. Now I'm going to go to the Lambda test website, and here we can see that the tests are running right now. Okay, so I'm going to click on this right here, and I can see here that 2 tests are being executed at the same time. Okay, this is what parallel allows us to do. All right, so it's going to go through all of the tests in each spec file, running 2 tests at a time. And our test execution is complete. If I go back over here to our project, we can see here that 2 tests have passed. Let's go back to the Lambda test website. And here we can see that for the first spec file, it took 16 seconds to run. The second one took 5 seconds to run. And if I click play on one of these right here, we're going to see the tests being executed and performing the different validations. So there you have it. That's how easy it is to run tests in parallel. You may be wondering though, why I've only set this to 2 right here. And this is going to depend on your requirements or your limitations. In my case, I'm only allowed to run 2 tests concurrently on Lambda test. However, you may have a plan that allows you to run 10 or more, or you may have an in-house setup that allows you to run many more tests. So just remember to update this number right here depending on your scenario. In this scenario, I showed you how to run these 2 spec files in parallel. Now, what if you wanted to run the entire suite? In other words, all of the spec files that you have under this test folder right here. In order to do that, we just need to go up here, and instead of having this line right here, I'm just going to delete it and uncomment the line above it. And as you can see here, what we're saying is that we want the test folder, which is this one right here, and then everything under that. That's what this represents right here. Okay, all of the folders under the test folder and all of those spec files that are inside of each of those folders. Now, I could go ahead and run these tests right now and show you guys what it's going to look like. So let me go ahead and do that. First, I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to bring up the terminal, and then we're going to re-execute this. If I go back to Lambda test here, I can see at least 2 spec files being run right here. Okay, they're running simultaneously. Whenever one of these gets done executing, another one's going to kick on, just like this. And this is going to continue until all of the spec files are done executing. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the video. Check out any of the links on the screen to get connected with the Lambda test community, get certified, and get access to the code that you saw today. See you in the next video.